I think people would be surprised to know how little professional players know about their sport.
I knew it was when my dad was a head coach for the first time at the Redskins. And I remember going and him just, dropping F-bombs, coach. And he never cussed at home. So I was like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? Like,
someone would want to come to a game because they were the fan of the other team. And we're like, no, you can't. Sorry, but like, what, you want us to give you tickets to root for the other team?
I still have my dad's NFL contract that I have framed, and he signed for $50,000. And I remember as a kid, my dad telling me he thought he was the richest man in the world, and he bought
if you owned 1,000, you could buy half of Manhattan Beach back then.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get started, make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. Welcome to The Family Business, a podcast about football and life from the perspective of a coach and his daughter. I'm Stephanie Turner, and I'm here with my dad, Norv, and my brother, Scott Turner. And today, joining us, we've got one of the most respected centers of his generation, two-time All-Pro longtime anchor of the Panthers offensive line, and a guy who knows all about football family roots. Ryan Kalil, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Anything for the Turners.
You look great.
You look except for Scott. Take that back.
Thank you. I was waiting for that. I knew that there was going to be something else there.
He said anything for the Turners except for Scott.
Yeah.
So you three worked together in Carolina. I'm sure you have some fun stories there.
Well, Scott worked twice with
Yeah, so I was with Ryan in 2011, 2012, and then again in 2018, where we all three worked together. And that was a crazy year that year. In 18, we started so good, and then obviously just towards the end of the season, we couldn't find a way to get a win. But
in between, you were with my brother, right?
That's right. We were both with your brother. Yeah, we were both with your brother in Minnesota. Yeah, absolutely. And then your brother was in Carolina with us too.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, but I always had a good time, working with you, even going back. And we were talking about it, and I don't know if I'm stealing Stephanie's thunder, but part of what thing I wanted to talk to you about was, was Cam Newton, and we were talking about the draft, and Mendoza is going to be the number 1 overall pick, and then they just signed the center, obviously from Baltimore, and they gave him all that money. And we just wanted to kind of hear your perspective on what that was like having and again, we know Cam is a unique person as far also as being a rookie, number 1 pick starting quarterback, but what that was like and you helping him, obviously, get his career going that year in 2011.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I think about, remember, is just the culture. I think you guys can all agree the best teams were always, I can never remember the records, honestly. I mean, some of the seasons you can, right? Especially the teams that were really good. And obviously sometimes culture goes hand in hand with a winning team, or conversely, a losing team, unfortunately. But I just remember, I remember the culture being great in Carolina, and why that's important is because it really kind of gave us the ability for us to work together, but all kind of be our own personalities and kind of our own leadership styles. And I say all that to say, because obviously a lot of people on the outside have opinions about Cam, but those of us that were in there on the inside, I think it's strange for people who have very negative opinions about Cam to find so many people that have his back even to this day, and sort of, continue to defend him, even as he wears the craziest outfits and has the craziest takes on all things sports. Right. But what I remember was, going into my 5th season, I was just taken aback because I just didn't think I was going to play in the NFL as long as I did at that point, let alone my entire career. And I was very blessed. I worked hard and I did love it and I found my love for it. And one of the reasons why I didn't think that was because the knock on me was always I was undersized. And that went all the way back to high school. And so there were people along the way that just really helped me kind of understand, you don't have to be a 320-pound offensive lineman. There's definitely a system for everybody. There's a certain playing style that will fit you. Obviously you're not getting drafted to the Cowboys, um, and actually Norv was somebody who first time I met him was at the combine, and he was in San Diego at the time. And I remember that was like me growing up as a kid, Chargers, that was my team. Even though I had Jackie Slater, I went to high school with his son. And so Jackie Slater was around a ton and I learned a ton from him and obviously my dad. But the Chargers was like, man, if you could play in the NFL and play near your hometown, like that was the thing, and I had uniforms of me as a kid. I can send them to you in my Chargers outfit with my brother, actually. It's kind of funny. But so I remember being excited to meet Norv. He was one of the few teams on my interview list. And I think I only had 5. Carolina was on it, but I accidentally overslept and I only made the last 2 minutes. So I remember calling my dad and being like, well, I'm never going to Carolina like that.
Wow.
Because I had time for one question when I came into the Carolina interview room, and he was like, it was Jeff Davidson, John Fox, and Marty Herney in there. And Jeff Davidson's like, well, I guess we only have time for one question. So I guess the question is, if we draft you, is this the kind of behavior we can expect? You just show up whenever you feel like it. I was like, no, sir. And I just remember checking them off the list. And then I was so nervous and excited to meet Norv because I so badly wanted the Chargers to draft me. And I felt like that was a system I could play in because I didn't, you could be a lighter center and you guys used the center a lot in pulling and getting out on the edge and obviously a lot of zone stuff. But I go in and I left that place not feeling like the Chargers had any interest in me. In fact, we spent the whole interview. I don't know if you remember this, Norv. You just asked me a million questions about SC and Pete Carroll. Because remember, like at the time, like we were winning a ton, and people forget, like when Pete got there, he was SC's 6th choice. Like fans were not excited to have Pete.
No. Right.
And I was lucky enough because I was only a 3-star recruit, and so Pete was getting him 5-star guys. SC still had the legacy and pedigree from even the times that you guys were there, and I was so lucky and fortunate that he was still kind of able to recruit blue collar guys because I think SC had just lost to Utah in the Las Vegas Bowl. So like that was not a school that everybody was pegging to kind of come back. And the verdict was still out on Pete. And then we started having all that success. Carson obviously won the Heisman, and next year Leinart came in and we were just rolling. But then 2 years later, so like my junior year at SC, they weren't recruiting 3-star guys anymore. Like they could get anybody they wanted. So I got lucky because two seasons later, and they would have never have looked at me. But I just remember that interview the whole time. You're like, so what? So tell me, like, what do you think he does well? Well, why do you think you guys have had success? And the whole time was just Norv trying to get insight on the culture and program at SC.
Well, I was trying to get your impression of everything. I coached there 9 years, so I had to.
No, of course.
I had to get a
I
scoop on what was going on there.
Yeah, because this was prior to social media or people having insight. Like this was still a time, I think, when everything was still kind of guarded. Like locker rooms were guarded. Like the culture was pretty guarded. Like you could sort of control the conversation or the stories based on your time with the media. Mm-hmm. And then I think all of us kind of have seen the whole spectrum of it, where it went from a very sacred kind of inaccessible place to like now there's cameras everywhere. It's like the Truman Show for all things sports, so which is good and bad, I guess. I mean, I think there's less there's less need to feel guarded in everything you do, but it doesn't feel as sacred or special, because I don't know, it feels performative in a way that I kind of miss the authenticity of like those special.
Yeah.
There's no place like it, and I think that's the thing everybody always talks about and misses. But anyways, I left that meeting knowing I was not going to the Chargers.
Well,
And
interesting.
Little did I know what a great center you guys had in Nick Hartwick, and
we had a really good center, so I probably looked at that list and wanted to know why you're on it too.
Trust me, I was every time as well.
Well, let's talk about the relationship, the center quarterback relationship, because as Scott kind of mentioned, like that is and we know from all the teams we've been a part of, like it's such a pivotal relationship for the success of your offense.
Yeah, very much so.
And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I realized I didn't answer your question about Cam. When I got to my 5th season, my contract was up. I never thought I'd have a Pro Bowl season and be a free agent. And so I just kind of was like in this really great place, and the Panthers franchise tagged me because they didn't want me to go to free agency. And I remember being just so humbled, but also kind of pissed, but also really excited that I just never thought I'd be somebody who would be like, oh yeah, an NFL team put the franchise tag on me as a center,
Yeah.
And it was also, there was a lot of unknowns. So John Fox had just got fired. We'd gone like 2-14, I think, that year, 2010. And so going to 2011, there was a lot of unknowns, and I also just didn't know what the next phase of this would be, who the next coach was going to be. And so they brought in Coach Rivera, which I got to meet him, and I was very excited, and obviously knew about who he was as a man and a coach from afar. So we were very excited by the success he had in San Diego and what he was going to bring for us. And I remember a really great conversation with him where he talked about, because you guys ran that 30 front and we didn't. And so I remember the first thought I had was like, how does that work if you don't have that kind of personnel? Like, little did I know, obviously the guy was very, very versed in all kinds of defenses, and that was just the personnel you guys had in San Diego. So he very much was of the school of thought, like, no, you build the system around the talent that you have, not the other way around. Which I always thought Pete Carroll did a good job of. Now, if you really want a real answer that I didn't have as a 20-year-old kid, I always thought Pete did a good job with the talent that he had, and never, because I've been in systems where it's like, no, this is how we do it, and this is what you need to do, even if you're not capable, and they tend to not work.
Well, it is the key to coaching, and Don Robinson, who obviously had a great run at SCN, the Rams, always talked about, I want you guys to find out what these guys do best and let them do it. We don't have to, they don't have to do everything. Make sure that they have the opportunity to do what they do best. And that's a big part of coaching, the biggest part of coaching.
Well, they don't do that everywhere. That was, I played 12 years in Carolina, and I had one quick stint in New York for the Jets, and that was not to beat up the Jets or anything. And there's a lot of great people that work there, but that was not my experience there. But so Rivera comes in. We don't know who we're going to draft. Obviously, we had the first pick. There's a lot of question marks about Cam because of the offense. Obviously, an incredible physical talent. And the knock that I kept hearing, or that everybody in the building kept hearing, in terms of what the media was saying, really, was that, Cam was going to struggle with an NFL offense because everything they did at Auburn was sort of built around his RPO type playing style. And so the game was going to be too quick for him, and it was going to be too complicated for him. And he was going to, he was really going to struggle mentally, was the thing everybody kept saying. And then it was becoming clear we were going to draft him. And so I was getting excited by the future of Carolina, where it was going to go. And I wanted to stay there, obviously, in the same place and I love that city. And so we my agent was Tom Condon, and at the time he negotiated me to be the highest paid center in the history of the NFL. Which is funny you brought up the kid that just got signed, because everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is a crazy amount of money for a center. But I remember when I signed my deal, a lot of people said that.
Yeah.
And I remember actually going to the Pro Bowl that year, and I had a lot of guys who were shitting on me, like to my face. It was the weirdest thing, like defensive linemen who I actually didn't like. So it was fine. But, and one of them was actually absolutely hammered, and he just could not stop saying how overrated he thought I was. So it's funny. He was an older head. So it's funny because this happens every era. It's like the money keeps getting bigger, and the older guys just go, I don't understand it, or I grew up in the wrong era.
Right.
So that was a funny thing. But the reason why I bring all that up was because I'm the highest paid center. Well, now there's an expectation on me to do a lot more than just block one technique or to pull. And I didn't realize it at the time, but they were like, listen, we're bringing in Cam, and he's a special player, but it's going to take him a minute to get used to what we're going to throw at him. Now we're going to build the game around him. And also he's a lot smarter than people are giving him credit for. But it's like anything, like you still need the reps. So like you got to take a bunch off of his plate. And so like at the time I was very agreeable and a company man. I was like, yeah, of course, I'll do that, whatever you need. But when push came to shove and it became a practical thing, I realized very quickly how little I knew about defenses. Because what I was being asked of me was to help identify pressures, was to help identify coverages, and I just had never done it. I think people would be surprised to know how little professional players know about their sport. And I could name, and I've asked this to a lot of guys across a lot of professional sports. And it's not because guys are dumb or that they don't care. It's because it is a lot of information. It's a ton. I think you guys as coordinators, you guys can appreciate that. There are so many moving parts and so many strategies and so many different things within your little bubble of like technique and your responsibilities, and also the emotional part of it and the mental part of it. It's a lot by itself.
Mm-hmm.
So to master that, to know that, and on top of that, kind of understand this bigger, grander thing, it can become very overwhelming very quickly. And that's what I found out the hard way, which is like, I'm still trying to be the best center I could be, but now I'm like having to study coverages, and I'm having to understand why defenses are pressuring us versus certain formations, which I never, ever, there was like only like 6 or 7 formations I really cared about. And the rest of them all were either like a foreign language to me, or they all kind of were similar,
Right.
And so like outside of like 3x1 or 2x2 or like 2 tights, like I just didn't care or didn't understand or didn't know. And so I remember getting really frustrated at Cam and at the coaches and at Shula, and because I was like, this is way more than I bargained for. And I was like, I'm fine to take a discount to go back to what I used to have to do, which was just remember the snap count and tell the guards who the mic was. But yeah, it ended up working. And to Cam's credit, like he really blew away all the naysayers. In that first season, he broke Peyton Manning's rookie records and just had a crazy arm and a crazy feel for the game. And I also think he took a lot of teams by surprise because they didn't know how to defend him. I mean, that was so new, and obviously it's now kind of a mainstay in the NFL, but I just remember at the time it was really hard for defenses to try to prepare for, because it was so different from other offenses.
Yeah, Rob Cheslinski, he obviously was the coordinator the first couple of years with Cam, maybe 3, I don't know. But he did a great job. It's what we were just talking about, identifying the things that Cam had done well at Auburn, putting them into a system, still combining the things really that we had done in the passing game at San Diego, and just tying it together. And when I first was involved with this offense, Ernie Zampese was a coordinator, and he didn't want the quarterback to be bothered with having to make a lot of calls. So it's going to fall in the center. and the center had to find the mic. He had to identify the free safety if that was an issue. It's a week to week thing. We had Doug Smith, who was a Pro Bowl center and really a talented guy, very smart guy, and he was asked to do it like you were asked to do it. We had a little different deal with Phillip Rivers. So defenses started doing a lot more, and he and Nick would have ongoing conversations, and they'd get in arguments sometimes in practice. Will you guys quit arguing and just let's get the ball snapped, But Phillip obviously was capable, and that was his. You saw it when he came out of retirement and played. He knows how to manage a game and
He likes to tell people what to do.
Yeah, he truly does. But I think to Cam's credit, to Jasinski's credit, the way they put it together, it became a different offense. And you're right, defenses struggled to handle it, and they really struggled to handle Cam because, they might have had the right guy lined up to take the quarterback on the zone replay, but that guy had to tackle a guy that was probably 20 pounds heavier, maybe 30 pounds heavier, and faster than him. So,
Norm, I've never forget quarterback position. I can't remember another player that I saw make defensive players sort of cower as he was coming down to DBs and linebackers. It was crazy to see. And Cam knew it too. And he would trash talk and call them babies and get this little baby out of here. I don't know why you guys keep bringing these infants out here. And they had no comeback because he really was like a defensive end. He reminded me of Julius Peppers, but at quarterback. It was so bananas. And obviously, as your guy, it's the best feeling in the world to come in and know that defenses are very nervous about not only his ability to extend a play with his legs, but also, yardage after, because he's so physical and aggressive, and he would really punish guys, and sort of he was really good at making guys sort of cower or quit physically.
Yeah, he's so physical.
I think that's the way Scott started the conversation. I think the Raiders, with the veteran center, with a guy who's going to obviously be one of their leaders, and if when they start playing the rookie, they're bringing in a rookie quarterback. I think it's a big plus for him to have someone who can kind of manage things for him as he's learning how to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ryan, I was there in Carolina then too, and obviously I have another perspective of it because I was a quality control coach on offense, and we came in and we, like you said, it became pretty apparent that we were going to draft Cam going through that process, and then that was the year of the lockout too. So I'm there with Chud and
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so we're putting in this brand new offense, but we didn't even get you guys until training camp, and so,
by the way, thanks for reminding me that. That's also one of the reasons why I was having a mental breakdown with everything, because I had no time to not only was I asked to do something I've never done before, but then we had 2 weeks to figure it out. And I remember I had John Matsko, who that I love and have a million stories about John. But for those that don't know John, if you don't know the man in the heart, and he's a strong cup of coffee when you first meet him.
And that was the offensive line coach.
Yeah.
That was the offensive line coach that we had. And so my first time meeting him was in the gym at Wofford, and we're 2 weeks away from our first preseason game. And he's talking about key protection. And all we ran the year before was 3-step drops and play action. That's all we did. Right. And now I'm having to identify the mic and re-identify it based on the coverage and where I think the safeties are, and looking at corners and alignment of corners. I'm like, what is this? I can't even see over there.
No, I mean, and that part of it, but you being able to take that off of Cam's plate was huge. You know what I mean? And it allowed him to truly play quarterback. Because I mean, I know you remember that first training camp, like we had some rough practices in there.
Yeah, they were rough.
Getting going, and it wasn't just, obviously getting a new quarterback, but like we signed Jeremy Shockey, we traded for Greg Olson. Like there was a lot of new players and big personalities too. And obviously Steve Smith. And I don't know if you like remember in training camp, like Cam could not complete a pass to Steve Smith, like camp. It was like a problem. And, Steve, like he wasn't necessarily happy about that. And then the first game of the season, Steve had 8 catches for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was like, nobody saw that coming. You know what I mean? Like just, and that's part of Cam's ability as a player, and what we're talking about, how physical he is. And, he really did enjoy
and
that.
I think the reason for that was because in practice, it was very constrained in terms of like letting him sort of freestyle and do what he wanted to do. And
Right.
when we got in the game, once it was clear, like, oh no, you have to account for him. He'll punish you if you don't.
Right.
It just started opening up all kinds of things. Cause then they started playing him, and then everybody else sort of became way, way open. And so I do feel like, and I think it's like anything, it's just, you can't cheat the reps, and it's just,
No.
time on task. And for me, not having the hindsight of like, oh, just trust the process, it's going to work out. I think everybody kind of felt that. And then once we started rolling, it really did make sense. Like the system is a better system, and it makes sense, and it gives you a lot more options, especially for passing coordinator, to do more things and to get your back out, and not to have a 6 or 7 man protection every time you want to throw the ball,
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, like, I mean, I remember putting that offense together with Chud, and like I remember making tapes of all the different Auburn plays. And, what we really did, not trying to oversimplify it, but we took that Auburn running game, and then with some of the traditional, 2-back runs that you would see in the NFL at the time back then, and then combined it with like a more of a sophisticated NFL passing game. You know what I mean? Because like I remember talking to Gus Malzahn, or Chud was talking to Gus Malzahn at Auburn's Pro Day, and saying like, it looks like you guys run like 9 different passing concepts, and Gus Malzahn said 8. We run 8, but we get to them different ways. And I'm like, and that's where you kind of knew that, like, or that's where the learning curve was going to be for Cam, and for him to not have to set the protection and point out the mic and just go play quarterback, and run that was huge. And I think that had a big part of his success in his career totally, but also just early on, you know what I mean? And he wasn't so, bogged down with having to do everything. Cause I've been at different places in the NFL, and not everyone does. And I'm not saying one way is necessarily better than the other, but Tom Brady, I was at the Raiders with Josh McDaniels, and like that Patriot system where that quarterback, I mean, he's doing everything at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he's in run game, pass game, he's making all the IDs, and that's fine. Obviously they've had a lot of success doing that. And they had success this past year with Drake May doing that in New England. So I'm not saying one's wrong or the other, but I know for the initial transition time, having the center handle a lot of those calls really, really helps take the weight off the quarterback's shoulders.
Mm-hmm. So
It's
Ryan,
still hard, and I still hate key protection to this day. I still haven't quite figured it out yet, but
it changes. That's the problem. You get different rules, and you get
there's a million that they're called. We used to call them CYA rules, cover your ass rules. So if you just as a coach, you give a million different rules. If a player doesn't, you can always go back to a playbook and say, well, it's right here on page 406. I don't know why you did.
That's why we always emphasize the quarterback get back and get rid of the ball, get the ball out, help those guys up front.
yeah.
But the one thing I will say, a comment you made that, you could have played at Dallas when I was there, because Stepnoski was about 275 when he played.
Yeah.
He had those 325 pounders on each side of him, but he was quite an athlete, very much like you. I mean, it would not have been hard for you at all.
Ryan, so your dad, we mentioned you were from a football family. Your dad played in the NFL, right? And
My,
USFL?
yeah, my dad grew up, we went to the same high school. Uh, he got recruited and went to go play for Lou Holtz at the University of Arkansas, which funny enough, Pete Carroll was a GA there. And my O-line coach, Golden Pat Rule, was a GA there, and Monty Kiffin was the coordinator. Um, and then my pops was not playing there, and Arizona was hitting him up, so he transferred to Arizona, University of Arizona, and then he got drafted by the Bills in the 11th round when they had that many rounds back in the day.
That draft, I was in the league when it was 12 rounds, and that was a long weekend. You know,
I bet. That's a lot of players in the draft.
It was a long weekend.
So yeah, my pops was in Buffalo for a couple years, and you know, in those days, those guys made nothing. I still have my dad's NFL contract that I have framed, and he signed for $50,000. And I remember as a kid, my dad telling me he thought he was the richest man in the world, and he bought a
$50,000, you could buy half of Manhattan Beach back then.
Yeah, my dad said he bought a Toyota truck, a brand new Toyota truck, and an Atari game system is what he said he bought with that money. But you know, those days, those guys were making more money with their jobs in the off season than they were breaking their necks every week. And so my dad was considering retiring, but then the USFL came about, and so he went over to play for the Wranglers and the Gamblers, and he was Jim Kelly's center for the Houston Gamblers. And so yeah, and then I think he played like 6 years, so 8 in total, and then moved back to California, doing his full-time business that he was making more money than he was playing football. And then he missed football. So he got into local coaching there at the youth level and at high school. So he was doing both, and then eventually became the president of the youth football league there and coached at Centennial High School forever. And, you know, the USFL had those innovative offenses, and that's what he ran here in California, and had a bunch of success, and then ended up coaching me and my brother. But yeah, we've been around football a long time, and you guys should do a podcast with him because he's got a million stories he could tell you. I'm sure you guys. That's the one thing I learned pretty quickly is how small the football world is.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's crazy small, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of crossover.
Yeah. I mean, I always, when people ask me about growing up and stuff, I always, you know, it is this, although like you said, there's a lot of coverage of it now, like these documentaries and things, but I think a lot of that stuff is kind of performative. And I do think that there is an inside element of this world, this subculture of, you know, particularly professional football. It's only 32 teams. So it's 32 coaching staffs. Now there are more coaches on each staff, but like when we were kids, it was, you knew all the coaches on offensive, you knew their wives, you knew their kids, you knew the players and their kids, and you would travel from team to team with your dad who getting different jobs, hiring, firing, whatever. But it was this like, there was a little bit of this like us against them type feeling because when you went to a city, like you were there for the team, because of the job, and your first friends were the people on that team, like the kids on the team. And so then they would go to another team, and it is this small world of like, oh yeah, oh, you're a coach's kid, I'm a coach's kid, and like this connection that you have with people. And now even watching football, I'm like, oh, you know, our friend Greg is coaching on the Rams. Like, oh, Shane is coaching at the Colts. Like, these are all people that, you know, Scott and Shane played college football together. He worked for my dad at the Chargers. Like, there's all these sort of connections, and it makes watching fun and like rooting for, you know, your friends and family members. But I was
Also
curious.
stressful, wouldn't you agree? I mean, the
Yeah.
stakes of it too. Like
yeah,
that's the one thing about pro football is I think it's easy to kind of stay in your lane and say, well, I played fine, so I'll be okay. But when you start becoming friends or like you're saying, almost like a family with people, now you're like, okay, well, not only do I have to preserve my job, but all these other jobs are on the line if I don't perform or if we don't perform. And
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how much of that sort of weighs on you and how much you take that into each game and each season.
Yeah.
Unless it's people you don't like, and then you're like, okay, well,
Let's get them out of here.
By the way, that goes both ways too. There's players that I've seen coaches. Um, I, I won't say the name of the player, but I remember one year John Fox was talking about guys who yap and guys who perform with their pads, and he says he always would say, I prefer the guys that perform with their pads, but if you are going to be a yapper, you better be a gamer on Sunday. And then he pointed at a guy, a defensive lineman that he couldn't stand. He's like, take him, for example. He said, me and him can't stand each other. I can't wait till the day he's gone. But on Sundays, he shows up. The guy just holds up a middle finger right to John. And I'm like, oh, this is a different kind of environment than I'm used to. But yeah, I think you're right. It is such a special place. The tight knit family is a real family, and yeah, that's got to be. And I always thought the toughest was on the coaches' families, because these coaches, people don't realize how much they spend in the building, watching film, trying to get every last second of preparation in before that week, and then obviously too, just the stress in the off season, depending on how the season went.
Yeah, I mean, we would sit in that family section because all the tickets, the family tickets, are all together, and you can buy tickets in other sections. But if you're sitting with your normal sort of seats, you're sitting in the family section. And if we'd bring friends or something, like, you kind of have to prep people, because you're like, hey, if we're, we were offensive. So, but you have to remind people, like, you can't complain about, like, you can't be critical of the team in the family section, because you don't know who's sitting next to you. And if the defense makes a bad play or something, like, the coordinator's wife sits in front of us and she's our friend. Like, we don't want to, like, piss anybody off, or, but it's just like it is watching the game through a different lens. And I think it's always kind of fun and interesting to bring, when we would bring friends or people from the outside of that into that, and have to sort of give them the ground rules. Or like my dad was the head coach, and someone would want to come to a game because they were the fan of the other team. And we're like, no, you can't. Sorry, but, like, what, you want us to give you tickets to root for the other team? Like, or if they were someone we were really close with, we'd be like, yes, but you can't wear a jersey.
Right.
You can't wear any colors. Like, you cannot cheer loudly in the head coach's suite for the other team. Like, that's just not allowed.
Right.
When I was with the Rams, it was early when I was there, but we played a Monday night game, or it was a night game in San Francisco. And I had two nephews who were probably junior high, maybe a little older, and they lived in East Bay. So I can get them, I'll get them sideline pass, but they show up with big old 49er jacket, 49er hats, jackets. I said, what? Are you guys out of your minds? You think you're going to be on our sideline with the 49er gear? That's not going to work. Well, what do we do? What do we do?
Yeah. That's great. No, it gets real fast. That's for sure, for the families and the friends and the people that come to games or whatever. They figure it out pretty quickly.
When you guys were kids, how good was Norv at leaving it at the stadium or at the building?
I actually think he was pretty good at that. You know what I mean? Obviously, coaches work a lot of hours, but, like, I remember the first year I went to training camp and, like, actually stayed over was when I was 12 or about to be 12. My birthday's in August, so 11. And I knew it was when my dad was a head coach for the first time at the Redskins. And I remember going and him just, dropping F-bombs, coach. And he never cussed at home. So I was like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? Like, this is like a totally different a different side of him that I witnessed. So yeah, he's pretty good. I mean, you could tell obviously when there was good games or bad games, but he was pretty good at leaving it at the stadium.
Yeah, I think we would
Or at the building.
see him on in games yelling and cursing. I mean, you could read his lips on the sideline and yelling at refs and stuff, and people would be like, "Oh my," friends were like, "Oh, I saw your dad on TV. Like he was screaming. He was so mad." And we were like, "Yeah, he doesn't act like that at home. Like he doesn't yell at us
Yell
like
at
that
you.
at home."
Yeah.
But I think we knew how important it was to him, and I think that part of it was throughout, and I think it was important to us too. Like we knew it mattered and it was important, and he got up before we went to school and came home late at night and dedicated, a lot of time. And he also brought home a lot of the fun stuff to us, like the stories of players, and you got to hear this practical joke that so and so played on someone. Like he included us in that, which I think made it really fun for us. And we were fans of the players because we watched the game, but we also felt like they were part of our family and we knew them. And I think that made it a lot of fun. And, take your daughter to work day was me sitting in the weight room with the strength coach or you know, like whatever, going to practice, waiting for my dad in his office. I would put Jerry Springer on or something on the TV while he was in a meeting or all the things that I was allowed to be a part of, he would let us be a part of. And when the guys weren't in the locker room, I'd get to walk in the locker room and look at their lockers, and then someone would come in and I'd be like, "Oh, I gotta leave. I'm a girl." But yeah, it was
No,
fun.
he never came home and threatened if these rooms aren't clean, they better be clean by the time I get home. Otherwise, we're going to do 9-on-7 the rest of the day. Like, he never threatened.
No, we didn't have to.
No, we didn't have to do that. But he would which I guess is typical. I have 2 kids. We're all parents here. He is he's a coach. And so it was we'd be shooting baskets in the driveway and he'd be like, "Okay, Steph, think about a cookie jar and you want it." And I'm like, "Dad, I don't even play basketball. I don't need to be coached right now. We don't, but it's I do that with my kids too. I'm like, okay, trying to give them tips or something. And
That's great.
kids never want to be coached by their parents.
No.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
But speaking of that, so did you always know you wanted to be an offensive lineman? Because one thing that I kind of wanted to talk to you about is I think there's the way the league has evolved. One thing you always hear is "Oh, if only the offensive line could protect better, or if they could get a better, line to help the quarterback." And it's made me think the way the league has gone, is the offensive line are offensive linemen a lost art sort of, or being a great offensive line, is that something that there isn't as much emphasis, or is it that there's not enough really good linemen coming up?
Yeah, I kind of think it's a combination. I think it's a couple things. But no, to answer your question, no, I did not want to play offensive line. I don't think any kid dreams of playing offensive line. I think it very much took a offensive line dad to say, "No, you're gonna play offensive line," and your mom's 5'11" and I'm 6'2", so I think your brother, you're gonna have the physical abilities or the height to do it.
Mm.
But I think now that I have a couple thoughts about it. I think now that I'm coaching my son's team and he's been playing a couple years tackle football now, 10, 11-year-olds. And then being around my other kids in their respective sports, club soccer, volleyball, baseball. I think what's happening is there's a trickle up effect happening. So I don't think it's by any fault of the NFL. I think if there is a decline in offensive line and really just in play across the board, I think it's because the youth leagues have gotten away from, and this isn't me just being an old head saying this is how we used to do it. I now as a coach, like I can see it practically in the players that I'm trying to develop and make good football players out of. But I just remember young hating practice because it was so boring, because it was all technique based. It was a lot of fundamental work. Everybody just wanted to do the fun part. But as every coach knows, like you and really good player knows, you have to do the fundamentals first, and you do those in the drills, and then the drills you take to the team periods, and the team periods you take to the game, and that's across the board. And we kind of were talking about earlier, you can't cheat the reps. And what I found in my short stint so far of coaching is the game has been romanticized so much. We've done such a good job of highlighting the fun parts of the game that's the thing everybody wants. They just want the results. And also the game's evolved in a way where we reward higher scoring games. We reward the playmakers. We've gotten away from the sort of I guess trenches kind of offensive mindset where you're sort of 3 or 4 yards a drive is great, and you're setting things up, and everything does feel more like a passing attack. And it's a passing league now. It's definitely become that. And for better or for worse, that's what it is. And so I think because there's an emphasis on that at the youth level, everybody wants to be John Madden. Like everybody wants to give the kids a million plays and a million concepts. And like, it's almost like they're doing it because they're bored, not because it's what the kids need. And I don't even think everybody's conscious of it. It's not until you have conversations and say, here's why it's important, here's why it's not. But like little Johnny on our team can barely tell you the difference between offense and defense, but you want to throw 20 plays at them and they don't know. So like the teams that I've been coaching, we have very few concepts, but we've been really good at it because you take for granted how little kids understand stance and the reason for doing things. And so like we've tried to really do a good job of helping kids explain, but I can see a clear path of a kid only trying to know and understand plays and just moving on, but not knowing how to do it or how to accomplish it or why you do a certain technique, which is so vital and important for the evolution of a player and how they can continue to grow and be better. But now that my dad's coaching high school ball again, I hear it from him, just sort of how little the kids know from the time when he first started coaching high school ball. And then I stay very close with a lot of college coaches. And NIL is a whole nother component of it that I think has really affected the game negatively because there's so much transition and it's such a revolving door of players. And you've heard people like Tom Brady and Greg Olson talk about this, but the game is sort of watered down in a way that you can accommodate guys who come in off the street through the portal very quickly, So I think there's a reason why you're bringing Phillip Rivers off the couch and you're seeing him come in the game and basically tell everybody what they're doing.
Mhm.
Like that audio of that game that he came into was so incredible. I mean, he literally told the guy to run a go route and that's what he threw him. I mean, it was nuts. But he's sitting there telling all the kids, line up here, do this, your emotion. And then the younger quarterbacks I see, all I see them do is this, And so the game is so different in that way. And I'm not saying I have an answer for it, but I do feel like there's a trickle up effect that's happening where there's not an emphasis on foundational work and fundamentals and technique. And so everybody's always playing catch up because every level they get to, there's just such an emphasis on know the plays, know where to go, but not how to do it and how to better evolve yourself as a player. And so I think that's a long-winded way of saying, I think if somehow we could change the youth culture, and it's not just football, I think it's across the board, but everything is about winning. And I think that's crazy at 10 years old.
Yeah.
Like I'm also not the mindset of participation trophies. Like I think it's important for kids to learn how to compete and not, it's not okay to lose, but it's not the end all and it shouldn't be it shouldn't be the destination for these kids. And I think it does a disservice to the clubs and the teams that are trying to win, because there is such an emphasis on, well, just put the best player in possible, and who cares about if these kids are developing or not. And you guys know better than anybody, how many kids do you see peak at 12 or 13? And the kids that are still growing into their bodies, or like you as a coach go, okay, he's a little bit soft, but I can see where he's going to be, or I can see once he hits his growth spurt, or once he figures out how to use his legs or his hands, like he's going to be really, really good. And there's none of that happening now. Now you're getting kids who sort of peaked at 12 or 13 and they're getting rewarded. And then the next kid who probably will be a better player than him is not.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think we got to get back to the basics, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get down to it, the number of guys who are actually going to have an opportunity to play at a high level in college and then move on to the NFL. And there's just a lot of offensive linemen who I wouldn't say aren't, they just haven't developed enough technique and skills because they've been limited in terms of what they do. And then you watch the teams that have that are having success, and you get down to who are the 8 to 10 teams in the playoffs, who are the last 4 teams. I mean, Seattle, they did a great job, but they're an old school run the ball, play action. Yeah. And you can tell how they're coached, and a young guy going in there, it could take them a while, and it could, but you look at the teams that continually have success, you have to be a complete offense, but you have to have the ability to run the ball when they know you're going to run, and some runs other than RPOs or zone reads. You have to be able to go double team a guy and go block a guy and say, hey, okay, we're going to do that. And I think the best teams are capable of doing that, along with doing a lot of other things real well.
Yeah, Ryan, I liked what you said about just as far as like, you have the exposure to the youth sport, and I think that makes sense as far as the technique and not being taught. And then I think too, like what you're saying, everyone's playing catch up, and then the guys that do get to the NFL with the practice time now, you know what I mean? Like you're just very limited, and the amount of padded practice, like to really work on those fundamentals and techniques. And you're, like you said, you're already starting from where a situation where you're feeling like you're playing catch up. So that part of it, the development takes a little longer, as well. And then, like you said, you said growing up, no kid really grows up and says they want to grow up and be an offensive lineman. You know what I mean? So that I've always felt like the offensive linemen are the hardest position. There's not as many of you guys walking the face of the earth to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, and then you talk about these other factors that have now led to, that's where, you can have a situation where there's the offensive line struggling, or having a hard time protecting, and then you get injuries involved too, because like I said, I just don't feel like there's enough NFL quality linemen truly out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And, you make a good point. We were talking about the lockout year where we had like 2 seconds to get ready for the season with John Matsko. I also feel like that new CBA deal we did sort of screwed coaches in the league in a big way, because, sure, there's different style offenses. And I think that in college especially, there's so many talented kids that just never had the exposure to either a really great coach who's a great technician, or just the scheme they were in. You weren't able to see exactly what they were capable of. And so with the new CBA, I think the players union was really struggling to try to find some footing on the financial part of it. And so where it felt like they got wins was, well, they got us some of our offseason back. And that's how they sold it to us. as players. And so we're like, okay, great. That sounds awesome. Like for a veteran like me, that sounds great. I get 4 or 5 more weeks. But for a young guy coming in, that's a lifetime to basically learn and be molded and to try to play catch up or to take a jump from a school that didn't teach them how to do drop back or how to pull or whatever. You know, there was teams like Oregon they were having success in their scheme, but some of those linemen were struggling at the next level because all they did was a lot of that kind of zone read offense. And I do feel like a month with John Matsko, he could do a ton of damage in helping a kid have a foundation going into training camp. But we took that away from the coaches. And I do feel like it was great for older guys again, and job security wise, it was good. But I do feel like there was a drop
And
off.
who negotiated older guys?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
You know, the rookie
that was,
leagues, you
class
always get
league.
the extra time. You still get the extra time with rookies.
Huh?
Yeah, but I think you used to get more is what Mike was saying. Like the rookies came in even earlier, and then also the other part of that was injury wise too. Like I did see a huge uptick, and Coach Rivera and I had a lot of conversations about this because he was very enamored with the stats on it.
Mm-hmm.
But you did see a big uptick in guys getting hurt, and I do feel like part of that was the guys who are really good at getting ready, you could trust them to get ready. And then there was the mid-tier guys who were very talented, but they needed a babysitter a little bit. Like, let's be honest. They needed to be in the building and they needed somebody. And so what happened was guys used to not do anything right after the season. Most of the really good pros that I was around, they would maybe take a week off. And then at the very least would start moving around and doing something that second week. But then there was a whole slew of guys who, as soon as that season was over, they weren't touching a weight or moving or doing anything until they got back into the building. And so in the old days, or prior to that new CBA, you could get away with that. You could come in out of shape and you'd have 4 to 6 weeks before you ever saw a position coach or a coordinator. And you were only with the strength coach. When we did that new CBA, not only was there shorter time to get ready for the season, but you guys were having to split it with the strength coach. And I remember a lot of butting heads where like the strength coach and conditioning coaches would be like, well, when are we going to have them? And then and then likewise, the coaches, the football coaches would be like, well, the season's coming up quick. Like, how much time do I get to get these guys ready?
Yeah.
So I do feel like the guys who weren't good at being responsible and taking care of business and in the off season, staying on top of it, they came in now thinking that they were going to have 6 weeks to get ready and they'd only have 2. And then you'd see these guys drop like flies,
Right.
hold hamstrings, like tons of soft tissue stuff. And then likewise throughout the season. And so, and then the other part of that is I do feel like, and I really believe this firmly, people have a perception that and this last year was no different, but there's a perception that there's just way more injuries and weird injuries than there used to be. I would argue that in the old days, training camp was so hard. Like I also got to see, I got to see the transition to 2 different eras. Like 2 days I did to like almost every other day that we got towards the end of my career where it was like, I mean, it was heaven for me, like an older guy.
Right.
But I remember those training camps being so miserable. And I just remember sitting in my locker, like it felt like 2 seconds went by getting ready for that second practice that day. And your pads are still wet and your body just aches and you just feel miserable.
And it used to be like a longer amount of time too, right? I feel like it's so short now.
You used to and you were going to have to get in your pads again and do it all over again.
Right.
I mean, that was the most crazy, but I also feel like there was a physical callus you were building by doing that. And more importantly, this is going to sound awful, but you would the guys who were not built to play in the professional level, you would discover them pretty quickly in training camp.
Yeah.
So they never got to a season where all of a sudden, like you had guys who would have highlights for the next 3 weeks and you'd be like, oh, this guy's amazing. And then all of a sudden they'd be out. Because in the old system, like that guy would be found out pretty quickly in training camp, or he would build a callus to sort of be able to have the endurance to get through an entire NFL season. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Right.
So I do feel like that's the case now, and yeah, I think it's affected the game negatively.
No, I totally agree with you. And what I was saying was, I agree with you. Like the rookies, you had more time with them, but even now, like the time limit, it's unlimited with like you could spend time with them once you had them drafted, and like they
Yeah,
a little later get in. Or so to me, like the rookie part of it, it's not much different. But where it really affects these players is those second and third year players, but particularly the second year player, because all of a sudden, like, you drafted an offensive lineman and it's like a whirlwind, and you know how hard it is that your first year in the league, because it's like all you're doing is draft prep, you know what I mean? And then you end up on a team and then you make it, and then all of a sudden you're in your next season and you got this guy and he's going into his second year, and that's where guys make their biggest jump, in my opinion, is from that rookie year to the second year. But now all of a sudden this second year tackle is treated with the same rules as the 13-year veteran. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
that guy, he needs to be in the building more of, kind of what did I learn from this past year? And like that's where that development can really grow. And you're lacking that because the rules don't allow them to be in the building. Like, they would always, you can't, like, as a coach, you can't even talk football with these guys. I mean, you might say something in passing, and we all know how that works, but like, because the player can't even get in there, because then it would be the whole voluntary mandatory type thing, but that's where I think that it really hurts, is those second and third year guys that still need that extra
Development and everything.
development over time, but the rules don't allow for it.
Yeah.
And to get back to Stephanie's original point, it is more impactful on the offensive and defensive linemen because it's just a different level. It's just a different level of play. And you're a defensive end, a young defensive end. You're going against an all-pro tackle. You're a young offensive lineman going against a great defensive end day to day or in games. It's tougher on them than, say, playing running back or playing wide receiver or putting a corner out there.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up here, so you're producing TV and film now. Is there anything we need to look out for? What do you guys have coming up?
We'll have some announcements soon, but speaking of football, my partner Blake Griffin and I, we bought an American football team in Mexico. So we are now owners of a football team, and take for granted how many moving parts and how much is needed to do that.
Run a team.
It's been
Congratulations. That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Thanks. It's been fun. And the fan base down there in Mexico is pretty crazy. They love American football. Absolutely love it. I mean, they've had a love affair for football that goes all the way back to the 1920s, and they play youth football there. They play high school ball, they play college, and it's good football. And so it's fun. It's a league called the LFA, and there are 7 teams now. There's going to be 4 expansion teams next year, and a lot of national players from all over Mexico, handful of American players on each team who are sort of in transition, in between training camps or just sort of trying to keep the dream alive a little bit longer. So I think for Blake and I, we went down there, and these guys do not make a lot of money to play football, especially comparatively to what I made playing in the NFL, and they love it. These are guys who have jobs during the day. They're practicing late at night. And so they really, truly are playing for the love of the game. And so there was just something romantic about that I just fell in love with. And in a world where now athletes, especially college kids, are making unrelatable amounts of money, there was just something really amazing about these guys who are playing for the love of the game. And I want to be a part of it. I want to support it. And the people who are involved and some of the characters and personalities were just so compelling and moving. And we just felt like, we should definitely document this and follow along. And so we shot a documentary last season. We're in our second season now. And we'll announce where we're going to release it and where it's going to come out soon. But it's been a lot of fun. The team that we own is called Osos Monterrey, and they're in Monterrey, Mexico's northern Mexico. So we're the Bears, and it's been a blast. I just absolutely love these guys, and it's also fun to be able to go down there and not only get to make decisions for the team and get to threaten coaches and know what that's like now, but to help these guys out and to pay forward a skill set. Stephanie, you brought up TV and movies. There is nothing from football that translates into that world other than maybe a little bit of resilience, because there's a lot of rejection, as you know, in that business.
Yeah.
But so for me to go down to kind of combine both, where we're shooting a documentary that I get to produce, but also I'm there altruistically, I get to pay it forward and take all this knowledge of blocking nose tackles and 3 techniques and identifying coverages and give that to somebody and help them even 5%. It's very rewarding and it's exciting. And I'm excited for everyone to, and I'll send the details, but I'm excited for everyone to see, to meet these people and to see the team that we built and to see what Mexico football is all about.
All right, we can't wait to watch. We'll have to follow for the announcement. You'll have to send it over so we can share.
And I will be also reaching out to your brother and Pops for watching film and helping us as we get close to playoffs. They have nothing else going on, so I know this will be very, very exciting for them to help us out.
All right. So before we let you go, we ask everybody the same question. If you didn't work in football, what would you have done?
I think what I'm doing now, I think I would have, that was sort of the goal at SC. I was not planning on playing in the NFL. Again, because everybody was telling me I was too small to play at the next level, everyone but my pops. But I was like, you're my dad. You're supposed to say that. This is not,
I feel like it doesn't count when you say it.
This doesn't count. But yeah, obviously, I found my way to it anyways. And I would argue football probably opened up way more doors than I would have been able to on my own coming out of college as like a young assistant or PA.
Yeah.
So it's been fun. I love it. And, I feel like a rookie all over again, trying to learn it in the short time I've been doing it, but it's a lot of fun. It's like, producing, I say, is like, it's like being a GM. It's you finding the coordinators who are the writers and the head coach who's the director. And you really are putting a whole team together. And hoping that with all the moving parts, as you guys know, that somehow it'll all come together.
I think there is a similarity like in the world, and I've been directing in TV and in episodic TV and film. And I think I always say like being the director, especially in TV, I mean, in film too, but I think it's like being a head coach and there's a familiarity that I feel being on a set with a crew. Because I'm like, oh, any grumpy old crew member, like that's just like a grumpy old head coach or an old coach, like it's like I can navigate those personalities.
Or grumpy offensive lineman.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so I think there's a similarity to like working on a film set, to being a part of a team because of that like camaraderie and like. The head coach, or the director, like you have to have this confidence and you have to sort of know the vision of what you're doing, but like you got to be able to communicate it. You have to get along with everybody. There's a lot of different personalities, like.
And just like a head coach, the director has to set the tone and expectations for the culture of the whole group.
Right.
Where it is different, though, that I've found pretty quickly is the communication style of coaches to players and players to coaches is much different than it is in the film business.
Right,
It's a lot, a lot more euphemisms are used, and I would say euphemistic language in Hollywood than probably I've ever heard in locker room or meeting room. So that's the one thing I do miss, though, from football is being able to communicate very frankly and direct and to the point in a way that if you understand the communication style, you don't take it personal.
Right.
Versus in storytelling and the medium of, all of that, it's a lot more making sure everybody feels comfortable with
Right.
the notes or
There's all the
suggestions.
politics and the hierarchies and the this and the that. And yeah.
I kind of wish Coach Matsko had to do like what we have to do with writers, which is you got to list all the great things first before you get to the negative or the notes.
Right.
That was never the case. No,
Right.
with John Matsko. No, it was right too. This is not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But you get the results quicker. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. We loved catching up with you. We really appreciate it.
of course,
talk-
anytime.
great
Miss
talking to you, man.
y'all.
Good luck with
Appreciate
everything.
you and thank you
Yeah.
so much. And thanks for letting me go down memory lane.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll see you on the next one.